Today I'm going to talk about fast food. When I was a kid, there weren't very many fast food places. I can remember when McDonald's first came to Pinellas Park. It was a really big deal. You could go there and you could get a hamburger for 15 cents. Think of it, 15 cents. Of course, back then, 15 cents was a lot of money, but nevertheless, we went there now and then. Not too often because that was expensive and Mom and Dad didn't want to spend the money. I only got an allowance of 25 cents a week. So that kind of tells you where it was at. Now, when we went to Grandma's house, things were different because in Camp Hill, Alabama, at the time, there was no fast food. There were no McDonald's, there was no Taco Bell, there was no Kentucky Fried Chicken, no Wendy's, no Mod Pizza, none of that stuff. All there was you and the grocery store. Now, Grandma had a maid that worked 6 days a week, probably 10 hours a day. She was well paid, but she didn't work on Sundays. Now, she did all the cooking. She came early enough to fix breakfast, and she fixed lunch, and she fixed dinner, and then she went home. And she did other chores too. We all loved her a lot, and she treated us kids really, really great. Well, on Sundays, we were on our own. And every Sunday, we had a little routine. We would go to church. And Granddaddy would always leave early to church because he was a deacon and had other responsibilities, and he always wore his business suit, and he always drove his car. And then we would come later in Mom's car. Grandma didn't have a car, so it was up to us to take Grandma to church. Now, if we weren't there, of course, she would get ready early and go with Grandpa. When church was over, and it was sometimes would run a little late, depending on whether or not somebody went forward. But you could plan on getting home anywhere between 12:15 and 12:45. We'd be mighty hungry. Well, lunch was running around in the backyard. Grandma had a big chicken yard in the backyard. She always had lots of chickens, and there were lots of eggs. And we loved to go out and collect the eggs. One thing I learned at an early age is you don't go into the chicken yard barefoot, because those chickens, they leave little piles of chicken doo-doo all over the place. And if you step on one barefoot, it squishes up through your toes, and it makes this gooey mess, and it feels real yucky. And then you have to hose your feet off with a garden hose before you can go in the house. Well, we would get home from church, and Grandma would always say, "Okay, kids, go out and catch us a chicken." And the three of us, myself and my brother and my sister, we would go out into the chicken yard, and we'd chase around chasing chickens. And usually my sister would catch the chicken. She was the best chicken catcher. But sometimes I would catch one. And there were certain chickens we were not allowed to catch, and Grandma would tell us which ones those were, and if we did catch them, they would be rejected because they were her best laying hens. But there were lots of chickens, and so we would chase around. We would take some corn out there and throw it on the ground and wait for the chickens to come peck the corn, and then we would try to pounce on them different ways. And finally somebody would grab a chicken, and we would go into the house and say, Grandma, we got a chicken. And Grandma would come outside ready to deal with the chicken. And she would grab that chicken by the head, and she'd go and just wring that guy's head right off. And then the chicken would fall on the ground and flop all around, and blood would squirt everywhere. And we loved it. It was awesome. And in the meanwhile, Mama was boiling some water in a big kettle. And we would dip the chicken into the kettle, and then Grandma would pull all the feathers off. She was really fast. And then we would cut the chicken up. And within 45 minutes or so, you had fried chicken on the table. Now, my favorite part was the liver. I really love the liver. Not now, though. I hate livers now. But when I was a kid, I really loved to eat the liver. And the only other part of the chicken that I would eat was the wishbone. And she would particularly always, when I was there, she'd make sure that the wishbone was cut out and fried up for me. And I always got the wishbone. I couldn't stand eating legs, chicken legs. Ugh. You bite into one and there's all those blood veins and so forth. My sister liked the chicken legs, but I didn't like chicken legs. I ate liver and wishbone, and that was it. Now, what was really funny is sometimes when we got home from church, us kids would collaborate and we would plan what to do. And we would go out in the chicken yard and we would chase the chickens all over the place, and we couldn't find them. We couldn't catch them. We could find them, but we couldn't catch them. And then we would go into the house and we would say, Grandma, Grandma, we can't catch a chicken. They're just too fast for us today. We can't catch a chicken. And so Grandma would go out into the chicken yard, and we loved to do this because we liked to watch Grandma catch a chicken. I mean, she was like 70 years old, maybe, I don't know. She was old, but she could sure catch chickens, and she knew how to do it. And she would get some grain in her hand, some ground up corn in her hand. She'd throw it out there. Come on, chick, cluck, 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 cluck. She'd make a little clucking noise and act really friendly to the chickens, and the chickens would get closer and closer and closer, and pretty soon one would get close enough and she'd pounce on it, just like that, and she'd grab this chicken, and then she would just grab it by the neck, wring the neck off right there, and it would flop around on the ground, squirting blood everywhere. It was great, and we got the biggest kick out of watching her catch chickens. And then we would dunk that one in the pot and shred all the feathers off, and it was on the table ready to eat in no time. And that's the way we had fast food back then. The chickens were the fast food, and I'll tell you, they were fast.